Welcome to episode 90 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on December 1st, 2022. Today, I want to recommend the 3 projects you should have on your needles right now. Right now. But don't worry, I won't actually tell you what to knit. Have I gotten all cryptic? Yes. Yes, I have, but just for a moment, I promise. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Judy, Andrea, and Meadowsweet Farm for becoming patrons of the podcast over at patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow. Collectively, my patrons are the largest source of income for the podcast, and they are the ones who make sure that the equipment keeps working and the bills are paid so that this project keeps rolling forward. Thank you to all of you. As the end of the year approaches, I like to send a little thank you gift to each of my patrons. Last year, it was a magnetic bookmark to help you keep your place on a paper pattern and a sticker with my sign-off blessing on it. If you have pledged at the $1 level, please hop over to Patreon and send me your mailing address because that level typically doesn't receive tangible patron gifts in the mail, so Patreon doesn't show me your address. Likewise, if you'd prefer to not receive the patron gift this year, please just shoot me a line over on Patreon. If you're one of the few who have told me in the past that you don't want to receive tangible items in the mail, I'm going to continue to not send the gifts to you, so if you've changed your mind, just let me know. When I was doing my student teaching way back forever ago, I worked with a 3rd grade teacher named Jan. Jan was a truly brilliant teacher and a huge influence on my teaching style, both when I was working in the schools and as a homeschooling parent. I still have strong memories of my times with her and the moments when I first saw her do something that struck me and became part of my teaching repertoire. One of the things that she liked to teach the children was how to pick a book. Now, most of the children in her class were still emerging readers. So like 3rd grade in the United States is 8 and 9-year-olds. But she had a method for picking books that works for everyone, no matter how well you're reading. Her theory was that you should always have 3 books that you're reading at a time. One should be a book that you already know and love, and you pick it up and read it because it's comforting. The story itself could be scary or exciting or complicated, but your relationship with the book is a comforting one. It's a story you've read a million times, or it's one you just really enjoy. It's a book meant to keep the joy in your heart. It's your candy book. Book 2 should be a book that's right at your reading level. To choose that book, she'd encourage the kids to look for one that has 1 or 2 hard words on a page. Either you weren't sure what the word meant or you weren't sure how to read it in the first place. But the story itself sounds interesting, and with just a little bit of effort, you can get past those minor things you don't know and enjoy the book. That book is meant to help you maintain your current reading skills by practicing them at a level ever so slightly harder than what you are used to. And that helps you also just slowly add more skills to your toolbox. The last book you should have is one that you want to read, but it's hard. Maybe the actual vocabulary is difficult, or maybe the topic is just a little beyond your understanding, or maybe it's both. This is a book that you maybe only read a paragraph at a time because you are having to stop to look up words, or you need to reread a sentence or 2 to fully grasp what's happening. The important thing about these books is that it should be about something you really want to learn, or be a story you want to experience for yourself through the written word. These books are meant to challenge us. Sometimes as we read these books, our skills increase dramatically. Sometimes they don't, but we embrace the challenge, and even if our reading skills don't necessarily improve, our tenacity does. As I was planning the podcast for this week, I realized that I had 3 projects on my needles that fit this pattern. I have a candy project, I have a project that matches my skills, and I have one that is really stretching me. And I'm finding that I'm getting the same benefits to my knitting as readers get when they follow this pattern to choose books. The candy project is a joy. The project matched to my skills is giving me suitable practice and a technique that I love, and the hard one is really stretching me and making me work. My candy project is Sanderling, designed by Capsis for Green Mountain Spinnery and knit in their Mountain Mohair, which is a 70-30 blend of wool and mohair made up with 3 strands spun together to look like a single rather than like 3 plies. It's a worsted weight yarn, which is one of the reasons why this is a candy project for me. I have done so much knitting recently in fingering / jumper weight yarn that working in worsted feels like instant gratification. Sanderling is an open cardigan with a very simple pattern. You cast on enough to form the front, back, and other front, and then you knit back and forth to the start of the armholes where you divide it to work the back and the 2 fronts separately. There's some very minor shaping for the armholes and neck. The front bands and the sleeves are picked up on the piece itself and knit into place. It is working up so fast. I can knit about 1 inch in an hour, and the lace is just an 8-row repeat. And once I have the first row spaced right, they just build off each other really easily. It's a very basic lace. It's just a leaning row of yarn over and decreases. For me, it's something I can handle while watching a show or talking to family or sitting in a knitting group. For someone else, the mere presence of lace would take it out of the candy knitting category, and that's okay. What you are looking for in a candy knitting project is patterns that have techniques you are completely comfortable with in yarn weights you enjoy working with. I'm getting instant gratification vibes from this project because it knits up so fast, but you can get the same sort of feeling from colorwork patterns that have motifs you work through quickly, or something with narrower rows to knit, or blocks that are quick to complete. What is an easy, comfortable knit to me won't necessarily be that for you, and vice versa. But seek out these projects and have one going at all times. They are the projects we can laugh over with knitting friends, or knit while we watch the sun go down, or enjoy knitting at a baseball game, or work on in the middle of the night when we're up late obsessing about something and need to do something quiet with our hands to calm our minds. I am going to love wearing Sanderling when it's off the needles, but I'm also loving the process of knitting it. I smile every time I pick it up and I set it down again reluctantly. I will tell you about my other 2 projects in a moment, but first, grab your candy knitting project if you have it within arm's reach, and let's enjoy a song. This is By Your Side by Wildheart.
Tell me that you don't feel the same. Are you getting low?
So the project that I'm working on that is suited to my skills is the Mitten Garland Advent Calendar designed by Kathy Lewinsky. I'm knitting this one with Shetland jumper weight yarn left over from other projects, along with a handful of other colors I bought for projects but ended up being the wrong shade. This pattern was released in 2015, and I think it's been in my Ravelry queue for at least 3 years. I moved it toward the top of the list this year and then forgot about my Ravelry queue entirely. Does anyone else do that? You spend all that time setting up your queue and then you just never log back into Ravelry, or log in 3 months later and oh, I forgot about all these projects I really wanted to knit. Anyway, I knit the Adventskalendar by Christina Kaspari in about 2012. That advent calendar is a collection of mittens and pointy hats with the number of the day duplicate stitched on one side of each. And I knit it while we were in the Philippines, and the only yarn I could find were these small balls of red heart at the bookstore. It served its purpose, and at the time, it was a challenging pattern for me. I hadn't done duplicate stitch before, and doing the smaller mittens and hats on DPNs was tricky for me. My oldest still loves it, but the last few years as I've pulled it out of the Christmas decorations, I sort of cringe a little. At the start of the year, I wanted to be so proactive and knit the Mitten Garland Advent Calendar through the year to use it this Christmas, but as I said, I forgot about it. And I know I won't have it done to use this year, but if I don't start it now, I fear that I will pack away the old advent calendar with the Christmas decorations and not think about doing a new one again until the next time I see it. So it's time to just go ahead and get started on this new one. This advent calendar is made up of just mittens, all done in a combination of 2 to 4 colors. The pattern has you start with a Latvian braid as the cuff, and then the cuff has a decorative section that includes the day's number, and then you knit the mitten body. I'm going to stop here to say that if you are simply a lover of winter and not really looking for an advent calendar, this would be an easy project to modify to just become a wintry decoration. The mitten designs are beautiful, and because the number is only charted for one side of the cuff, you could just knit the back of the cuff for both front and back and end up with a collection of decorative mittens to frame a window or a mantle or a bookshelf. For me, this is a project that allows me to mainly practice what I already know with a few opportunities to grow. It's mainly stranded color work in the round. I did have a false start. First, I decided that I didn't like using the size 1 needles that she recommended. Also, I was doing it on DPNs at first, but the mittens are such a small circumference that it really makes the best sense to knit them with the project on 2 DPNs with a third to knit onto, but that is still really hard for me. And splitting a 2-sided mitten over 3 needles while also adding a thumb gusset was just not comfortable. Also, I like the look of Latvian braid, and I don't mind knitting it, but I just don't want to knit that much of it. So I've swapped it out for a corrugated rib instead. So I pulled out my first attempt at a mitten after, a dozen rounds or so. And I switched to a very short circular size 2 needle instead of the size 1 DPNs. And as I said, I'm doing a corrugated rib instead of a Latvian braid. And things are moving much faster now. Had I continued as I was going, this would have been my hard project instead of my skills practice project, just because of how many things the original pattern called for or recommended that I can do, but I don't necessarily enjoy doing yet. The main skill I'll be practicing on this project is color choice and placement. The original pattern uses 4 main colors and a smattering of a few others for details. I think I've pulled out 14 colors. 4 of them are various shades of gray, though. 3 of the colors, blue, gold, and white, I plan to use in each of the mittens to tie them all together. So I won't necessarily use all 3 of them in one mitten, but each mitten will have the blue or the white or the gold, as well as other colors. Some of the mitten patterns will be easy to incorporate other colors into. Some are going to take a little more thought. The other skill I'll be practicing is knitting the thumb gusset. I've only done it a few times, so this project will give me 24 more chances to do that. It's not a particularly tricky skill to master, but that is what makes it a good next step skill to work on in a project that's meant to be mostly practicing skills. Rather than pushing to get it done for Christmas and losing my mind in the process, I'm just going to work on them as I can and aim to have them ready for next year. While the mittens are quite small, so far it is looking like they're going to take me about 3 days of knitting for each one for me to get it done. It's very possible that along the way, this project will become my candy knitting, or maybe I'll find another technique or two to pick up and practice as I go. I was just down at Knit New Haven after Thanksgiving. Linda has a fresh shipment of Attenti knitting bags. They are lush, my friends. The materials are gorgeous and they are all well constructed and meant to last you for years. They are the ultimate treat yourself knitting bag. If you have someone in your life who is unsure of what to get you this holiday season, or if you just want to treat your own self, reach out to Linda at Knit New Haven and she can arrange an order for you. A Morehouse Merino Flock Group subscription would also be an excellent holiday gift to yourself or a fellow knitter. Each month is a new knit-along project with instructions and meetups and online knitting times, plus online support and cheering on from your fellow group members. Learn more at morehousemerinoflock.com. There are 2 to 3 spots left on the Contemporary Crafts Tour in August 2023. We will be having lessons in fused glass, silver jewelry making, machine knitting, felting, wood carving, and fabric printing. You will learn from the skilled artists of Shetland and come home with wearable items for yourself and usable items for your home. And along the way, we will visit sites we do not see on the other tours and learn more about the history of the area as well as the current climate for the knitting industry. To learn more, please visit IthoughIKnewHow.com and click the link in the header to Shetland Tours 2023. Turvie is my stretch project. It's the one I really, really want to knit, but it is going to take me a while, and I expect there will be a bit of a struggle along the way. Turvie was designed by Elizabeth Williamson, who was on the show not too long ago, and I've taken her classes, and she will be hosting online knit-along times to check in with us as we work on it. It's a wide Shetland lace stole knit with Jamieson & Smith's Shetland Supreme, which is a 1-ply worsted spun yarn. It is a true lace weight. I think some would be tempted to call it cobweb, but I think cobweb is even finer. It might be a cobweb. Maybe not. Maybe I'm working with even trickier yarn than I imagined. The yarn is one way in which this is a challenging project. First, I will say, though, because it's a worsted spun yarn, it's actually holding together better than I expected. So that is one potential challenge that I'm not having to worry about. That said, because it is so fine, it is common for the stitches to just sort of hide right up against one another. And it's also very easy to accidentally put your needle into the stitch below the one you're meant to be knitting. This is not in any way TV knitting. I can comfortably knit and look around the room or watch a show or look someone in the eye as we talk with pretty much any project I work on, but not with this yarn. This yarn needs direct eye contact at all times. At least in my hands it does. The pattern itself doesn't have anything in it that I haven't done before, but the pattern is over 100 stitches of short repeats of lace, interrupted by a bit of plain knitting here and there. It is tricky to remember how many times you've done the repeat when you're both counting the stitches within the repeat and the number of times you've done the repeat. Stitch markers help, but there are only a few places in this pattern where it makes sense to place a stitch marker. Knowing how to read your knitting is therefore essential, but again, the stitches are so small that it's trickier than what I'm used to. Not impossible, but trickier. I can only work on Turvie when I'm sure no one is going to interrupt me and when I can give it my undivided attention. As you can imagine, that means not a lot is getting done on it right now. But it's my stretch project, and I'm learning a lot because I really, really want to knit it. and have the finished project, so I will keep plugging away at it. Your stretch project shouldn't be a total stretch. When you are picking a book that is meant to make you stretch, you don't pick one that's in a totally different language. When you're picking a stretch project for your knitting, you want to make sure that you have some of the skills in place that you'll need for the project so you can ultimately be successful. But you are being a bit courageous in a few areas, maybe by choosing a yarn that's a little intimidating or an aspect of a technique that requires your concentration to do it right. And it's not cheating to use some tools to help you succeed. Use a lifeline in a lace project, or use a program like Knit Companion that will let you zoom into sections of a pattern so you can focus on it in chunks rather than as a whole. Use stitch markers or scrap yarn to have a visual representation of where you are in the pattern so your brain matter can focus on something else that you need to pay attention to. Try knitting lace with a thicker yarn first. Try knitting cables or working a new technique at a looser gauge. Then go back and try it again with the proper yarn or at the right gauge. I told you at the top of the show that I was going to tell you what 3 projects you should have on your needles. You should have a comforting, easy project that keeps the joy in the craft. You should have a solid practice project that will help you maintain your current skill level and slowly build on what you know. And you should have an aspirational project that requires your focus because you really want to learn the new technique or wear the lovely finished item, and you're willing to take the time and put in the effort to make it happen. The benefit of this system is that it works for any knitter at any skill level. Just take the time to make an honest assessment of the project before you begin. We sometimes beat ourselves up for having too many works in progress on the needles at a time. And in full disclosure, I have 2 others on the needles at the moment besides these 3. One will come off soon, and the other is just going to wait while I work on the sweater because I'm loving the sweater so much. But having these 3 types of projects on our needles at all times can keep us loving the craft and improving our skills. I think my goal for the new year is going to be to just try to keep one of each of these types of projects on my needles. For now, it's time for a song. I think I will pull out my Sanderling and knit as I listen along. This is another one from Wild Heart called You Got Me.
I know you're scared, you wanna hide away sometimes. I know you heard from everyone telling you lies. I bet you just wanna lose your mind. So just lay down beside me, give me all your issues. I'll take them and I'll make them mine. Don't get caught up in your feelings, just feel them. It's okay if you wanna cry. I'll hold you forever, chase away all of your bad dreams. You got me, you always got me. Let it out, just feel it. Let it out, cry it all out to me. When you're down, when your heart stops beating, you got me. You always got me. I know you're scared, you wanna hide away sometimes. I know you heard from everyone telling you lies. I bet you just wanna lose your mind. So just lay down beside me, give me all your issues. I'll take them and I'll make them mine. Don't get caught up in your feelings, just feel them. It's okay if you
Hey guys, I'm just popping in a day after I recorded this real quick to add that I was out on a walk today with my friend Jenny, and it was literally freezing. We passed a part of the Great Swamp that had frozen over, but not much. And as I am wont to do, I tried to throw a rock through the ice. It's one of my simple joys. And it was too frozen to go through, but it made an amazing sound. So we stopped walking, and I got a recording of Jenny throwing rocks on the ice for me. And I want to share that with you. And so I am going to add that file to the very end after the music, after the closing music. So listen all the way to the very end today. Okay, back to the show as recorded. A few more things before we go. Wovember is over. I just announced the winners like minutes before I started recording this. So I'll grab my list here and I'll read them off in case you didn't see the post. So the writing prize went to Spanish Wool by Teresa Lalana. The photography prize went to Julie_Leatherwood Creek Farm. Mrs. Amber K3 won the Wear Wool prize. And then the posting prizes, the 7 days of posting went to I Own a Paint. The 15-day posting went to Wool_Alicia. And the 30-day posting prize went to Black Med Knits. Now, I say the 30, 15, and 7-day prizes, but in order to qualify for those, you just had to post for at least 7, at least 15, and at least 30. And the random number generator just happened to pick 3 people who had all finished all 30 days of the post. So well done to all 3 of you. That's fantastic. Thank you so much to the prize sponsors who provided the incentive prizes for people to do the posting. And thank you so much to those who wrote for the LoveWovember website. I loved reading what you had to say and watching your videos. And thank you to everyone who joined in on the Wovember event over on Instagram. I loved reading your words of praise for wool and the people who take care of the animals who grow it and those who process it into workable forms of wool for us. The marketplace on LoveWovember.com will still be there through the year, as well as the written contributions. Feel free to pop over there and access either as you see fit. There is a group of people who have acquired the old Wovember website and social media accounts. They ran their own prompts this year, but they didn't announce it until after I'd announced mine and lined up all the prizes and contributions. So I went ahead and did my prompt event. But next year, I do not plan to run an Instagram prompt event. I would like to do something different. I will be looking for designers and wool producers who might be interested in an event that will be a supplementary celebration of wool to run alongside whatever the new Wovember team decides to do. When I say designers, I'm talking about designers in all the fiber crafts, crewel work, knitting, spinning, crochet, felting, weaving, nail binding, whatever. And wool producers can be yarn or roving or fabric. If you are interested in doing something a little different with me next year, send an email to ann@ithoughtIknewhow.com and let me know. And when it comes time to get the ball rolling again, I'll reach out to you. This is the end of season 7. I will be stepping away from the podcast until after Christmas to allow myself some extra time for family and celebrations. The next episode should come in early January. That said, there is still a lot coming your way. The daily blog event with Jana of the Purl Together podcast is already underway. We're getting together each morning for a bit of a chat and to open our winter yarn boxes and to share interviews with one of the dyers, designers, or wool producers included in the boxes. Find those on the Purl Together YouTube channel by looking for the Woolly Winter Countdown videos. Also, the yearly Yarn Stash Restash will begin on December 26th and run for 2 weeks. I have been calling it the Yarn Stash Destash over the last few years, but really it's not a call to get rid of anything you don't want to. The main goal of the Yarn Stash Restash is to get your stash organized and see it all and make sure it's all in good condition and ready for you to use in the new year. It's designed to be a gradual, gentle, judgment-free process to help you get it all organized. In the past, it's only been on Instagram, but I figured out how to get my Instagram posts to show up on Facebook too. So if you're following the I Thought I Knew How page on Facebook, you can see the daily prompts for that and work along with everyone else. And at the end of 2 weeks, you'll have a stash that feels bright and fresh and new again. I hope that you enjoy your winter holidays, and thank you for joining me through this season of the podcast. I'll be back soon, my dears. In the meantime, thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/I-thought-I-knew-how to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website I-thought-I-knew-how.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you're on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Thank you ever so much to my patrons, to Knit New Haven, and to Morehouse Farm for sponsoring the podcast. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.